Hi everyone, so today we're going to talk about the sum and difference formulas. So we're going to give you an example. Let's say you have the sine of 105 degrees. Now, when you try to find that, that is the sine of 60 plus 45. And then if you were to simplify that, that would get you back to 105. It is not the same thing as you saying, I'm going to take the sine of 60 and then add it to the answer of the sine of 45. So please know that those are two different things. We also want you to be familiar with the fact that it is possible to find the exact value of the sine of 105 degrees without a calculator by observing the sine and difference formulas. So let's give you this example here. Here is the sum of two angles with sine. So here we've got our first angle as well as the second angles. We have our two little Greek symbols, alpha and beta here. And we're going to use our formula. We're going to put in 60 degrees and 45 degrees in for the appropriate locations for those angles. And when you use your unit circles, then you're able to figure out what that answer would simplify to. So it's important to choose two angles from your unit circle. It just makes your problem a little bit easier to simplify. So here are your sum and difference formulas, your identities here. You will get this on your formula sheet. So it's important for you to think about when are you doing the cosine and when is it the sum or the difference, and when you're using the sine and if it's a sum or a difference. So please keep those in mind and just be careful with which angle you are using. So here, our first task is to find the exact value of the expression. Now, looking and thinking about how you can get 15 degrees from your unit circle, well, you could say this would be the same thing as saying, I want the sine of 60 degrees minus 45 degrees, that would get me 15. You also have other options that you can do, right? You could do 45 degrees minus 30 to get 15. So you do have a couple options, but you'll get the same answer at the end. So now let's go ahead and use our formula. This is the difference formula we're going to use for sine, and that would get me here we go. We have our first angle here. So we have the sine of 60 degrees times the cosine of 45 degrees. And we're going to subtract the cosine of our first angle, which is 60, times the sine of 45. So again, we're using this formula here. Now, as we go ahead and simplify that, we're going to get that this is, from our unit circle, root 3 over 2. Cosine of 45 is root 2 over 2. And you're going to subtract cosine of 60 is 1/2 times the sine of 45 is root 2 over 2. Now, if you simplify these, what you would get is the square root of 3 times the square root of 2 is the square root of 6 over 4. And then you are subtracting 1 times square root of 2 is square root of 2 over 4. And then if you were to simplify that, you have the square root of 6 minus the square root of 2 over 4. Remember that when your radicals are not exactly the same, you can't add or subtract them. So you can't say this is the square root of 4 over 4. Okay, so in this question, what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what formula this is. So we're going to look and see, we've got the sine of 184, and then we've got cosine of 56, and then we are adding cosine of 184 and sine of 56. So that would actually be this formula here. It matches. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, oh wait, well this is my first angle and my second angle. So what that is, it's really the sine of 184 degrees plus 56 degrees. And when I simplify that, I know that 184 degrees plus 56 is 240 degrees. So then if you were to continue looking back at your unit circle, sine of 240 is negative root 3 over 2, and that would be your final answer. Okay, in this last question, we're going to figure out what we have here with a cosine, and we are adding, so we're going to use this identity right here. So what we've got is we have cosine of my first angle, which is just x, and then we're multiplying that by cosine of my second angle, which is 3 pi over 2. And then we are subtracting sine of x and then sine of 3 pi over 2. All right, so as we look at this question, what we can do is we can say, all right, well, I know what the cosine of 3 pi over 2 is. I know that is just 0. And then I know that the sine of 3 pi over 2, I know that is just -1. So when I simplify my answer here, what I'm going to get is I have, well, 0 times cosine of x, well, that's just 0, right? So that's going to cancel out. And then you have negative sine x times -1, which would simplify to sine of x. So negative times negative will get you that positive. All right, thanks for learning with me today on the sum and difference formulas. We are unlocking the power of math one problem at a time. See you in the next lesson.